Finish it on Monday, since Monday is 2 hours. Okay, should finish all of the topics by Monday.
Okay.
So for this afternoon, we'll be talking about types of fractures and dislocations. So basically, these are just applications of what we learned last time. Okay, and then knowing how the fracture happens. And then knowing where in the bones the fracture happens, because that's where the name of the fracture will come out. So basically, it's just fractures. It's just the location of the fractures and then knowing what the name of the fracture is. Okay?
Boxer.
So that's why we have to go first with the basics, okay? Because this one is just the name of the fracture, so there's really nothing exciting. It's just that you need to know the name. Okay, so we'll start first with the. So again, this is what Netters looks like. I don't know if some of you have already downloaded the book. But this is what it looks like. So basically, it's stabilized. How it happened, what are the things that you can see. Supposedly, classification, but in your level, we're not gonna talk about the classifications. It's just nice to know. And then how it is supposed to be treated. Okay? And then just to recap, there may be some of the things that we will be talking about, especially physical examination, and then findings wise, it's very anatomy. Okay? So we might need to relearn what we already learned. Okay? Just like okay, for this one, okay, we'll start first with shoulder dislocation. So when we say dislocation, it's when it is not congruent with the joint. So the two bones are away from the other. Okay, so that's what we call dislocation. Okay, so shoulder, it's this one, glenohumeral joint. So basically, it is the most common. And then, do you need the PowerPoint after?
Yes, Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Okay, so sige, I will sige, so I will give it to you and then just try to scan this in your spare time na lang. Okay? This is common in young, especially athletes. And then what else? If there is a associated fracture of the glenoid, because you have your glenoid and your glenoid fossa and your humeral head. Okay, that's the two bones that articulate to form your shoulder joint. So if there's a fracture of the glenoid fossa, it's what we call bony Bankart. Okay? If there is associated, okay, later na lang. Okay, next one. If there is associated fracture of the humeral head, it's what we call Hill-Sachs lesion. Okay? Hill-Sachs, H, head, so coincides the two. Okay? So if not the head, it's the other one, it's Bankart. Okay? Posterior dislocations it is associated with seizures, electrocutions. Those are commonly posterior dislocations happen because anterior is the most common. Okay, when you see a patient with shoulder dislocation, it is described as with flattened shoulder. Okay. So flattened shoulder, and then this one, the one in green, most commonly injured nerve is your axillary. Now the next question is,
Muscle.
okay, so muscle daw. Okay, so what will be the possible?
There is minor deltoids.
Okay, mostly your seats. Okay, try to know which of the four is innervated by your axillary. Okay, and then you will have, if there is axillary nerve involvement, sensation wise, you will have numbness, lateral aspect of your arm. Okay, which is not mentioned here, but it was mentioned when you were first year. Okay, so okay, like I said, different types of shoulder dislocation. It will depend on where the humeral head is located in relation to your glenoid fossa. Okay, so if the head is anterior to your glenoid fossa, it's anterior. If it is at the back, it's posterior. If it is above, then superior, and then very rarely this inferior. Okay, so mostly it's anterior. Okay, good. So every dislocation, regardless what joint is affected, we need to reduce it, put it back in place. Okay, so that's our treatment. And then there are different ways to reduce a shoulder dislocations, which are the following: Hippocratic, Stimson, Milch, scapular retraction, or the one that we see in Facebook. 6 months dislocated. You take them to this person and then you put it back. Okay? I don't know if that is true or not. Okay, but so again, this is the okay, anterior. If you notice, this anterior to the glenoid fossa. Posterior, if it is posterior to the glenoid fossa. And then if it is inferior, then inferior shoulder dislocation. So this is the axillary view. So AP, and then when you look at an AP view, this one, you cannot tell where the humeral head is. So this is your glenoid fossa, this is humeral head. AP wise, you cannot see if it's posterior or anterior because they will look the same. Okay, that's why you will request for axillary view. So axillary view, this one, you can now see the glenoid fossa and the humeral head. So with this is okay, posterior. Okay, so without this, it is very hard for you to tell. Like this one, it's very hard to tell if it's anterior or posterior. Okay, then these are the following ways to reduce it. This one, Stimson, Hippocratic, is just okay, nice to know. It's very nice to know. Okay, but there are different ways. Okay, okay, so that's your shoulder dislocation. Okay, we'll now go to humeral shaft. Common scenarios wherein a patient will have humeral shaft fracture is either from a fall or a direct blow, meaning direct hit on the humeral shaft. Okay, last time we mentioned deforming forces. So these are the muscles that are responsible whenever there is humeral shaft fractures. So pectoralis and your deltoid. So deltoid and your pectoralis, they will have a pattern for the two bones. Okay, what else is here? Okay, with regards to the humeral shaft, there is a nerve that winds around the shaft, and that is it winds around where? Which part, which specific part of your radius? Huh? It's a groove. Huh? Okay, radial groove, but there's another name. Actually, sige.
Surgical.
No? It's called posterior. Posterior to the shaft. Okay. It's your spiral groove. Okay? Spiral groove of the radial nerve. So it's a groove for the radial, that is the spiral groove. So when we talk about radial shaft fracture, again, fracture is not just bones, it's musculoskeletal and even neurovascular. So check the surrounding structures. That's why this is mentioned also, even though we're supposed to be humerus fracture bones, are we talking about nerves because it is located around that area. Okay, so humeral shaft fracture, radial nerve at risk. Okay, so we have, if there is a radial nerve injury associated with your humeral shaft fracture, that is now what we call your Holstein-Lewis fracture. Okay, so Holstein-Lewis fracture is a humeral shaft fracture with associated radial nerve injury. Okay, and then in ortho, when we treat the fractures, remember we have three requirements that or the goals that we need to achieve. We need to correct the length, the alignment, and the rotation. But function-wise, there are instances wherein you really do not need to put it back anatomically. That's why if you notice when you look at the book, there are parameters wherein even though it's not normally straight, even when there is bend slightly, it is still considered normal because function-wise, a straight bone and a slightly bent bone will have the same function. Okay, as long as it is within that range. That's why when you notice here, acceptable 3 cm shortening, less than 3 cm shortening, even if it's shortened 3 cm, even when it is undulated, as long as it is within that range, it is acceptable because we're talking about the function, meaning very straight humerus and slightly bent humerus, as long as it is within the acceptable range, their function is the same. Okay, so that's why when you notice, when you read the book, there are a lot of numbers. Okay, that's the reason why. Beyond that normal range, that's when we do our conservative management or non-surgical management or surgical treatment. So that's your basis. Not all fractures need to be operated on. Okay, so that's why you have your basis when to do your surgery. Just like this one, if it is shortened more than 3 cm, the angulation is more than 30 degrees, you might need to do surgery. Okay? Okay, what type of surgery? Plating, external fixations, or nailing. Okay, there are a lot of ways because to heal a fracture, we need good blood supply and your stability. Your stabilization can be a lot of things. 5 ways for one fracture. Just choose which one of the 5. Okay? So this one. Okay, we have a humeral shaft fracture. We can put splints, or if we cannot achieve the LAR, then we'll have to do surgical management. So we can use plates, and an external fixator or nails. Okay. So again, this one, your radial nerve, it's found in the spiral groove in the humeral shaft. So it is the one that is at risk. Okay, and then These are, you will notice in the book, again, there are a lot of numbers and angulations. What are those numbers? What do they mean? So, we will make a line from one part of the bone, and then the other one make a line, and then get the angle. Okay, so this is the angle from make a line here, and then make another line at the center of the bone. Okay, and then this is the angle now that we want to know if it is within normal or not. Okay, if it is within normal, some of it we can do non-surgical management, and then if it is beyond the normal, that's when we do surgical management. So this will be applicable to the succeeding fractures. Okay. Okay. Question. Sige, patient came in. Humeral fracture. On your PE, you notice okay, limitation of movement. What do you think is the limitation of movement of this particular patient? Huh? Huh? No? Okay, this patient comes into you na, Doc, I might have, because nagkuhan mo siya, the patient, before he quit, he was still able to go to first year. So he knows a little bit about the spiral groove and the nerve. So, Doc, I have a humeral fracture. From what I remember, there's a nerve that is found around the shaft. What do you think is my limitation of movement? Huh?
Extension. Extension.
Extension of what?
Wrist and shoulder.
Okay, that's one actually. Radial nerve, okay, wrist drop. You cannot extend your wrist. What other joint is affected?
Elbow.
Huh?
Elbow.
Which movement is limited here? Huh? Where ba? I heard it. Okay, elbow extension. Okay, so the patient will have problems with elbow extension. Okay, so again, we have to go back to anatomy. So we have to do na lang. Anatomy. Okay, so this one, elbow dislocation, fall, and then what else? With elbow dislocation, you can have purely dislocated bones, or there could be associated fractures. So, for elbow, we have this terrible triad, wherein there is elbow dislocation, so composes of three because of the name triad. Elbow dislocation with radial head fracture and coronoid fracture. So, if you have that three, that's what we call your terrible triad. Okay, so again, it's just names of where the fractures are. Okay, so that's what we call terrible triad. Okay, during elbow dislocation, ligaments can be torn. The capsule is also torn. Okay, what you will notice is swelling, deformity, deformed elbow. Okay, and there is limited range of motion. So, just like with shoulder dislocation, also check neurovascular structures. And then, for elbow, posterior or posterolateral is the most common type. So, elbow, this is how we base our types. So, your shaft, the distal part here, the ulna, the olecranon, if it goes posterior to the shaft, rooted Kani-kani. So that way, then that's your posterior. Okay? If it is in front, anterior to your humerus, then it's anterior. So that's how we base it. Medial is the distal is medial to your shaft. Okay? So that's how we know how we classify elbow dislocation. And then every dislocation we have to do close reduction. Okay? And then for the associated fractures, it's just nice to know at your level that we can do internal fixation. We put screws on the radial head and also for the coronoid. Okay? To put it back in place. Okay, what else? Okay, so these are the possible neurovascular structures that are involved around the elbow. Okay, median and ulnar nerve and your brachial artery. Do you want another patient? Okay, during some of you will be designated as the most toxic clerk. So during your duty, you will have a lot of patients. So that's why, starting from now, we'll practice you. There will be a lot of patients coming to you. So for the median nerve, how will the patient manifest if there is median nerve injury? Sensation-wise, lang sa sensation. Huh?
First 4 digits, then half side.
First 3.5. Okay, so that's sensation-wise. First 3.5, and then your ulnar is your lateral half of your fourth, and then your fifth. Okay, sensation-wise. Okay, so that's how we will be able to know if there are median and ulnar nerve injuries. Okay, so again. Your shaft. So we are looking at this on the lateral view, lateral side. So the ulna or your ulnar notch is posterior. So this is posterior, and then this one is what's this? This medial or lateral? Huh? Is there a name? No, there's a name. Okay. This is lateral because no, is there a illusion?
Posterior.
Radius is supposed to be no, radius is lateral. Radius is lateral. Now, okay, it goes to that because it's twisted. I thought this one is here. Okay, so it is lateral. Okay, so again, anatomy. Okay, so when we reduce the elbow, this is how we reduce the elbow. Patient is prone, and then someone will hold the humerus while the other one will pull the forearm down if it is posterior. Okay, so because if it is posterior, your humerus is here, your ulna is here, so you want to put it down. If it is posterior, if it is anterior, and then this is what you do, you are pulling it away from the joint. Okay, if it is anterior, you have to push it up. Okay, so that's your elbow dislocation. Okay, radial head fracture. Most common site or most common portion of the radial head that is commonly affected is your anterolateral. So, antero and lateral side. Okay, that's the most common area. Okay, names. Again, the names of the fractures is just combination of the bones that are involved. Okay, Essex Lopresti fracture is when there is a radial head fracture with associated intermembranous disruption and associated distal radio-ulnar joint. So again, radius and ulna, we have the interosseous membrane. So if the interosseous membrane is affected, that's what we call your Essex Lopresti. Okay, so radial head with interosseous membrane disruption. Okay, this is associated with, or the radial head fracture is associated with elbow dislocation. Okay, what else? So we do X-rays, and then for radial head, again, this is just nice to know. Do not try to memorize all the types. Only the ones that are at your level lang, which is the Stilo Anderson. Okay, but this one, do not even try to memorize the classifications or the types. But this is just nice to know. Okay. Okay, if it is displaced more than 2 mm, if it is comminuted or fracture with elbow dislocation, it's time for. The reason we classify all the fractures and dislocations is our treatment will depend on what type they are. Okay, can we do non-surgical management? Do we need to do surgical management? It will depend on knowing what type they are. Okay, so if any of you wants to go on orthopedics, you will need to learn all of this so that you'll be able to know how to treat the fractures. Okay, so radial head. Okay, so these are the types. So again, no need to know, it's just nice to know. Okay, radial head, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. And then this is your Essex Lopresti injury or fracture. You have radial head fracture and then disruption of your interosseous membrane. So what will happen if you have disruption of your interosseous membrane? Your radius and ulna will be very movable. It's very unstable because without the interosseous membrane, nothing holds the two bones. Okay, so that's why this one we need to know if the patient has associated interosseous membrane disruption. So that's what we call your Essex Lopresti. Okay, these are just pictures of the treatment. So if there is a fracture, radial head, we can put it back, we can reduce it, and then we can just screw it. Okay, your screw is your stability. Okay, or if it is very comminuted, we cannot put the fragments in place, we can do arthroplasty or replacement. Okay. Okay, we'll go to radius ulna. Again, this is just a common scenario is trauma. So fall or MBA. So they're basically trauma. Okay, it can involve one bone or it can involve the two bones. Okay, the radius and the ulna. Okay, what else do we need to know? Okay, there will be swelling, tenderness around the forearm, then you can do X-rays. Again, classification, no need to know, it's just nice to know. Nice to know lang niya na it happens on the proximal, the shaft, or the distal of either the radius and the ulna. For this one here, for patients less than 12 years old, some of the fractures we are not as aggressive. So meaning some of the fractures really did not need surgical management because for children, their bones can still remodel. So when you hear the word remodel, meaning it can go back to its normal anatomy, even though we did not reduce it. So that's why for patients that are less than 12 years old, there are fractures that no need to do surgery because it will remodel by itself. So one of these is your reduced ulna. But if this happens to an adult, their bones cannot remodel anymore. So whatever the position of the two bones, that will be the position of the bones forever. So that's why adults were more aggressive. Okay, so that's the reason why. Okay. And then if there is malunion of especially the radius, your radius is not straight, it's somewhat curved. The radius is the one that moves around the ulna. Okay, so your ulna is just stationary when you pronate. Supinate, it is the radius that moves. So that's why we need to reduce it anatomically, achieve the length, alignment, and rotation, because if it is not anatomically reduced, you will have problems with supination and pronation. Okay? So instead of able to pronate all the way here, maybe only this one, only like this, and then supinate instead of going all the way, probably only this. Okay? So that's the importance of this one, loss of the radial bow. Okay? Okay, that's your reduced ulnar fractures. We also have single bone fractures, commonly the nightstick fracture. So when you hear the word nightstick fracture, it can be any bone as long as branch, the branch of the tree when you try to break it. That's what we call a nightstick injury, wherein it's not completely fractured. It's just it's cracked, or it's fractured only on one side. Okay, so we call that a nightstick injury. Okay, then this is very common when there is direct blow to the forearm. So the nightstick fracture is commonly associated with ulna, and parang you are shielding yourself from a direct blow. You shield it with your forearm. The ulna will fracture only on one side. Okay, so nightstick. So again, if it is not displaced, we can cast it, but if it is displaced, we will need to do surgical management. Okay, so this is an example of a radius and ulna fracture. So again, what we just need is good blood supply and your stability. What stability will you use? There are a lot. So in this one, a plating was used. Okay, a plate was used. This one. Okay. Okay, this one. These are the ones that are commonly asked. So these are just names of the fracture, no? So this is very common. This will come up in rotation, even in the boards. Okay, first is Monteggia fracture. So when you hear the word Monteggia fracture, it will involve your ulna, proximal ulna, and there is an associated radial head dislocation. So the two should be present to be called Monteggia fracture. If there's only one, then it's either ulnar fracture or radial head dislocation only. Okay, so the two must be present, Monteggia. Okay. How it happens is usually a fall. A lot of these fractures usually happens from trauma. So we are discussing. So there is a classification of the radial head dislocation. Again, this is just nice to know. So if the head is anterior, it's type 1, Bado, or Bedo type 1. If the head is posterior, and then lateral. So this is just nice to know that there is a classification for this. So you have two problems, ulnar fracture and head dislocation. So we need to treat those two injuries. So we will reduce the head and choose a stability for your ulnar fracture, usually plating. Okay? Okay. These two are, usually if you mention Montegia, it should be partnered with Galeazzi. Okay? So Galeazzi is, there is a fracture of the radial shaft, and then there's another one. There are two injury. Disruption of the DRUJ or distal radioulnar joint. You have a joint here, distal radius and distal ulna. Okay, there's a joint. There's a ligament that holds the two ends in place. If there is an associated injury of that joint, it will widen. Okay, so that's how you know there is a disruption of the DRUJ if the two bones are, if there's widened space. Okay, so that's the disruption of the distal radioulnar joint. Okay, so radial shaft and distal radioulnar joint is your Galeazzi. Okay, and then with the radial shaft, your stability is plating, and then so that the other injury, which is your distal radioulnar joint, so to keep it from moving away from each other, we have to put something. So we should pin it. We pin the radius all the way to the ulna so that the two bones will not move. Okay. Okay. So this is your Montegia. So we have your ulnar shaft fracture with associated radial head dislocation, because your head should be here. So with this is the Montegia. So again, radial head could be anterior, this one is posterior, but as long as there's a radial head dislocation with ulnar fracture, that's your Montegia. And then radial shaft or distal radius fracture with associated distal radioulnar joint disruption or injury, that's your Galeazzi. Okay, so for the treatment, Montegia will reduce the radial head and then plating on the ulnar shaft. Okay, just like this one. Okay, just like plate. For your Galeazzi, we'll plate the shaft, and then we will pin it, this one. We'll pin the radius, the distal radius on the ulna, so that it will not move, to give time for the ligaments to heal. Okay, because the ligaments is disrupted, that's why the two bones will move. Okay, there's a code for this, so that it will make your life easier between the two opponents. For your Montegia is the two combination. Anyone? Okay, Mugger. Yeah, there's one. Some reviewers use Mugger. Wait, but how will you know? Okay, Montegia is you, and then Primus is reduced. Okay, we can use that. Or the ones that I use is Grimus,
Basta auto lagi dahil nga mo. Kuan mo, di siya kalantaan.
it's the same. So as long as you're able to match which one is which.
Jaman ito dahil ha.
Okay. Now this one, this is also very commonly asked, but basically it's just the distal radius, but depends on where the fracture is located, the name will change. Okay? So when we say coles, coles is extra-articular fracture, meaning if this is your distal radius, this is the articular surface, fracture happens extra-articular, meaning here. Okay? So the articular surface is not involved. So extra-articular fracture, and then there is dorsal angulation, or this fragment here is displaced posteriorly. Okay? So, like this. Extra-articular fracture, and then this one is displaced, let's say it falls posteriorly or dorsally. Okay? So that's your coles. If the distal fragment is displaced anteriorly, it is now called Smiths. So again, basically, it's the same fracture, but it's just the position of the fragment. Okay? For coles, the deformity is dinner fork, because if the fragment is displaced posteriorly, it will look like this. So, dinner fork daw. Okay. Dinner fork, coles, Smiths, angular, volar angulation or displaced anteriorly, it will look like this. Like a garden spade. And then, no. Yeah, a very small shovel. So, it looks like a garden spade. So, that's the deformity in Smiths. Okay, how about if it is not extra-articular, how about intra-articular? We call that Barton fragment. And then, if the fracture involves the anterior part of the articular surface, we call that volar Barton. If the fracture involves the posterior articular surface, we call that your dorsal Barton. Okay, so basically it's your articular surface. If the anterior portion is fractured, volar Barton. If the posterior, it's dorsal Barton. Okay. If only the styloid process is fracture, we call that chauffeur. Okay, or chauffeur. Okay. So here in the picture. Okay. Again, we'll start with coles, extra-articular, and then this one, the distal fragment, is displaced posteriorly. Okay, if it is displaced anteriorly, it is Smiths. And then if the articular surface is involved, you notice here, this is the posterior surface that is fractured. That's your dorsal Barton. And then anterior Barton is when the anterior part of the articular surface is the one that is only involved. Okay? And then radial styloid only. So, chauffeur. Okay? So this is what we will see. This is very common when you go on duty. Okay? So this one here, this is lateral view. This is the normal. And then this is the injury view. So if you notice, the fragment is displaced posteriorly. Okay, so that's your coles. You cannot identify coles only by looking at it anteriorly AP. So you need a lateral view. So this is your dinner fork deformity. And then Smiths. This is position actually opposite that. This is anterior knee. This is the anterior. Okay, so the fragment is displaced anteriorly, and then this is now your guardian's pain deformity. Okay, so these are extra-articular. Okay, about this one. This one is your fracture fragment. This is the only the anterior half or the anterior portion of your articular surface. So this is your volar Barton. If it is the posterior, dorsal Barton. Okay. So again, just like with any other fractures, we have to correct length axis rotation, and then after that, provide stability. So for this one, a plating is usually used to provide stability. Okay, so the principle is just the same. Good vascular supply, provide stability, correct length axis rotation. So if you can do that, you can apply it to all the other fractures. Okay? Okay, how about, sige, because we're going down. Hip dislocation. Okay, it's almost time. Do you have class ko ano?
Yes.
Yes, Doc.
I think we can finish this on Monday na lang. Sige, kami na lang, we'll just do this one, the last. Okay, hip dislocation.
Motor vehicle.
What are what are the bones that that composes your hip joint? It's your and
Acetabulum.
and okay, and your acetabulum. Okay, shoulder, glenoid fossa, and your humeral head.
Buhatin mo na kabila. Wala may
How about for the elbow? Radiocapitellar, that's your radial head and your capitellum, and ulnohumeral, ulna, trochlear na, ulnotrochlear.
Nasa usot din.
Sige, for this one, it's your femoral head and your acetabulum. So, commonly this is a dashboard injury. So, when you are sitting the car. So that's why it's called a dashboard injury. Is when there is an accident, your foot or your knee will hit the dashboard, and then your femur will displace. Okay, so that's what it's called dashboard injury. Your knee will hit the dashboard of the car, and then that's the time when there is dislocation of the hip. So it is just like any other dislocation, but the one that is peculiar with the hip is that there is a risk for avascular necrosis. So avascular necrosis of what? Meaning the bone will die. The femoral head will have avascular necrosis because during its dislocation, its blood supply will be disrupted. So if there is injury to the blood supply, it can lead to femoral head avascular necrosis. And that's why if you have hip dislocation, we have to put it back as soon as possible. Okay? Okay, most common type is your posterior. Okay, posterior. There's a characteristic PE finding for hip dislocation patients. So if it is posterior, usually the patient will manifest abducted or adducted, flex, and internally rotated lower extremity. Okay? And then if it is anterior, it's the other way around. Okay? So just by looking at the patient, you can tell which hip dislocation the patient may possibly have. Okay? And then nerve at rest is your sciatic nerve. Okay? What compartment of the thigh does the sciatic nerve innervate? Posterior. Okay. Posterior.
Check na natin.
Check. And then it will bifurcate to become
Common peroneal.
and tibial nerve. Okay. Later on, we will use that later. Okay. Okay. So again, we do X-ray. Okay, X-ray. Okay. So just like with other fractures, we will have types, classification. So imagine we have to know all the classifications. So for you, no need to know. Okay. It's just for us.
Ato na i-X na.
Okay. So again, treatment for hip dislocation is you have to reduce
Ito
the
po na.
okay. There could be associated fracture, whether fracture of the femoral head or fracture in the acetabulum.
Good to know naman daw.
At your level, it's nice to know that there is dislocation and then there could be associated fracture. Okay? So we'll reduce it again. After complications for hip dislocation, you can have post-traumatic osteonecrosis, meaning the osteonecrosis is due to trauma. So post-traumatic osteonecrosis, the femoral head will die. Okay? And then sciatic nerve injury, this is very common in posterior dislocations. Okay? So you have to know what type of dislocation it is because your maneuver will depend on the type of dislocation. Okay, so later on we will see that. Okay, so again, go back to anatomy. Okay. So anatomy, this is the hip, this is the capsule, and then these are your blood supply. Okay, blood supply to your proximal femur. It is the medial femoral circumflex artery that is the most dominant or the one that is supplying your femoral head. So later on we will learn again what other injuries that is associated with this artery, but this is the one that is affected when there is femoral head osteonecrosis or femoral head AVN. Okay. Okay, so again, know what type of dislocation it is because it will depend on your maneuver. Okay? If it is posterior, meaning this is the acetabulum, the head is posterior. So you have to, this is posterior, the head is behind the acetabulum. So what you will do is have the patient lie down and then pull the femur. Okay? Pull the femur so that the head can go back in place. If it is anterior, you don't have to pull the femur. Okay? You have to push it back. So you have to do X-ray first. That you'll be able to know if you need to pull or if you need to push. Because if you do not know, and then it's anterior hip dislocation, then you keep on pulling the femur, you're promoting more damage. Okay? I think that's it for now. Okay. Again, in the book in Swartz, there are